Well, good morning. Welcome, everyone. Glad you could make it. We are back for another edition of the DEKALB Asgrow Current Agronomic Topics. Myself and Nora Schultz. Morning, morning. Glad to have everyone. And as usual, we will start with the trivia. Going to cover a few things. GDUs, emergence. It's fun time of the year, but like Nora mentioned, we usually all of us on the call here get called when there's problems, and so not everything is perfect, but talk about stands and evaluating some stands, and then other current topics that are taking place. Once we get the corn and soybeans out of the ground, then we start to see things and start to see a lot of potential issues. And then we'll finish with a spotlight product. Trivia question though. So pretty straightforward. And actually, there's a 50% chance of getting this one right. It is a yes/no question that we all should know, but it's also pretty important. So, can Liberty herbicide be sprayed on a VT Double Pro or a Tricepta hybrid? See who the fastest one. Not only fast with the fingers, but fast with the internet.
Right. I'm monitoring the chat. We got a no. We got a couple no's.
Yep. And that is the correct
Scott
answer.
and Amanda, thank you.
Yes. Scott O'Connell was first, showed up first in the chat. So you are winner this morning, Scott. Congratulations. And definitely that is correct. And also very important. And I think we all know it. A lot of our growers know it, but a lot of times our growers need reminded, and also they need to make sure they know exactly where things are planted. Because the last couple of years, with a little bit more Liberty being sprayed in the corn crop, it leaves the potential for some mistakes to happen. So hopefully we don't have that, but never hurts to remind your growers or check with your growers again and again and again. Can't be too careful on that one.
Nope.
All right, so there is your answer. Big no. All right, well, let's jump into GDUs to start off with. And see, we've got some on from Plymouth County, so I did pick Plymouth County this morning as far as our GDU accumulation. And surprise, surprise, we are running ahead of normal. Just took several different planting dates. 11th was Friday that, well, for most areas, that was about when things started. But across the board ahead, even from that 3rd, which would have been a week ago Saturday, so a week and a half ago now. We've had enough GDUs, of course, to get that corn out of the ground as well as soybeans, and we're running 55 GDUs ahead. I looked at some corn that was planted that Saturday on Monday, 2 days ago. So it had been in the ground 9 days and it was up. The emergence risk forecast tool from that planting date had predicted, depending on where you're at, either 7 or 8 days to emerge, and it looked like that's about what it was. So we accumulated tremendous heat units from that day on and brought that corn up very quickly. So we're at the point where, we're going to get a new leaf out, technically 82 to 85 days, GDU days, or GDU units, I should say. So that comes down, depending on how much this heat stays in, to roughly every 3-4 days we're going to see a new leaf. Just to put it in perspective, you see how many GDUs are running ahead. So you could say, well, we're about a leaf stage ahead of, say, the average. But then you also take into account our planting dates. So much of the corn was planted in those earlier windows this year, so that's also jumped us ahead. But we're going to talk about some corn post-emerge, but that's one reason I bring up the leaf development coming on, because we're going to need to be watching when corn is growing so fast, what herbicides we can and can't use, which is crazy to be talking about that already in mid-May, but that is the reality, and which is a good thing. GDU above normal GDUs before pollination is pretty much always a good thing, right, Nora?
Yeah, we'll take good growing conditions.
That's right. So jump right into some of the current topics. And one of the more common calls I've been getting, and I know you've had a few, but maybe not quite as many as you go south into your area, but a lot of challenges with the no-till soybeans and getting stand up out of the ground. A couple examples here in the picture where we've obviously got some crusting. We've got some ground that was wet, and of course that seed furrow opened back up. We've got a challenge with just that hypocotyl arch starting to swell, pulling the cotyledons up through that hard soil. And then what I don't have a picture of, and probably just as big of an issue, but a tremendous amount of residue trash this year. Without much snow, without a lot of moisture over the winter, we didn't tamp it down. We didn't break it down much, and that residue is very fluffy. So it was a challenge to plant into, a challenge to get good to seed to soil contact on our no-till soybeans. And so, with that, we know we just didn't get a real consistent depth. And a lot of times rain will fix these problems. Most areas haven't gotten quite enough rain, at least to date, to be able to seal that seed slice or soften that ground up and get the rest of these soybean seedlings out of the ground.
Now, Jim, you're seeing these mostly on that, like just after the Easter, like when guys were still just getting back into the field, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's a good point. And, both for corn and soybeans, you always look at there's certain planting dates that don't end up being as good. I haven't been able to pinpoint too many dates on corn. Just we've overall had pretty good stands. On soybeans, it does seem like that 22nd, 23rd. It was a stretch before it turned cool, and there was a lot of acres planted, so that's always a factor to keep in mind. But it does seem like the no-till soybeans planted that 22nd, 23rd have had more challenges from what I've seen, even from the earlier planted soybeans or than the ones that were planted that next week. But we did cool down the 24th, 25th through there. Some areas got some significant rain. Some areas it just ended up being, a quarter inch. So it wasn't quite enough to help out with some of these seed slices that are opened up. But, big thing is, okay, well, what can we do about it? And that's always the challenge. It's tough when you talk about problems that there's not really a great solution. When you're looking at soybeans, we know we've still in a window where we've got very good yield potential. You can look at the charts and I think once you start getting past the 10th of May, I think you do start losing a small amount of yield potential. But, really you don't see that drop off until you get more to the third week of May. So we're in a window if we need to replant or still need to plant, we've got good yield potential. As far as a threshold, always a tough call because with soybeans, you've got a lot of factors to take into account. Is it lighter ground, variable ground? Do you have high pH? Those situations, you need more plants out there. Is it a field with a lot of weed pressure? That canopy is so important. Yield wise, I'm very comfortable leaving 75, 80,000, knowing though that, that's going to be tougher as far as canopy and as far as helping yourself out on weed control. But also if we've got high fertility, we've got white mold history in that field, then boy, it's where we really are just fine having that lower stand. As far as some of the replant options, and I know some have already done this, have gone ahead and thickened up stand, added to some of these fields. That's a call that each field is going to be a little bit different, based on some of the factors I just mentioned. I know we've seen in the last couple of years, we've had situations like this, maybe not necessarily on no-till, but on conventional till where there's been crusts. Go in there with the planter. Sometimes you add stand, you're also opening up that crust and you get a lot more seeds, and then you end up spots that are 200,000, and that works against you. So I guess bottom line is, hopefully we've got that potential for rain coming the next few days to help us out. I guess I would be very patient to wait some of these fields out. What I've seen is there's still stand coming. There's still plants that are going to be emerging over, boy, at least a week's time. But for soybeans, that doesn't bother. That doesn't bother me. At least those are going to catch up. So we can be very patient on these no-till soybeans and wait it out and try to get to that 75, 80,000 level. And then I think we're going to be in good shape. Yes, your comments, Nora?
That's all the same things I would say, especially in white mold country. A thinner stand does not make me sad. Mm-hmm. So knowing that field history, and a lot of these things that we're bringing up this week, guys, are things that we're not going to do a whole lot about, but we want to let you guys know so that you can go walk field, check fields with guys and make something that might be a little scary to the farmer a nice touch point and value added touch point for you and your customer. So a stand of 100,000 to a grower might seem a little scary, but agronomically, it's not something to really panic about when we've had these nice early planting conditions. So.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. So how about on the corn side, Nora? We like I was mentioned before, we generally have good stands, but there's still some challenges. Of course, when you get stressful conditions, hot, dry, it starts really exposing some things. And, especially when it comes to roots, if the root development hasn't been good, if there's been some sidewall compaction, some open seed slices again, you're really going to see that unevenness, or you're going to see that stress be magnified. Some of these shots, I think we've got some salt injury going on, some burn, happen to be manure application fields. Both of these have that seed slice opening up. And, just like the soybeans, rain will help tremendously. Without rain, we're going to start getting to that point where these nodal roots are going to be struggling to develop. And then, of course, what comes after that is rootless corn or floppy corn syndrome. So the potential is there in a number of fields where we have to be aware of that. Again, not much we can do management-wise other than, Nora, the old C word, cultivator.
I have seen it be successful a handful of times, but generally rain is the most successful factor for this. But yes, the C word of cultivate.
Yeah, and try to throw dirt up and stimulate nodal root development for down the road. And same situation if we've got some shallow planted corn. I have seen a fair amount of this. We had, especially in corn on corn, loose fluffy scenarios, we had some variable planting depth. Certainly saw some corn that got in an inch to inch and a quarter. And by the time things settled down, it was extremely shallow, and that is not always the worst thing in the world for emergence. In fact, sometimes it's going to come up quicker. But down the road, knowing that having a challenge to have those nodal roots develop and just not allowing that plant to be as drought tolerant or just to stand later in the season is the big risks there.
So another thing that we're seeing, Jim mentioned it, some salt burn. This is some, we believe, anhydrous burn in a strip till fall applied field for one of my dealers. And again, this is something we can't really do much about other than do rain dances. The C word won't even help this, but we want to let you guys know because if you could catch it, if you can walk that grower through it, the fields that might be at risk. I do think that there's the potential for a really good relationship building kind of moment, even though it's a tough infield situation. So the fields that I've been hearing this more about, it is fall and one spring this year. This field in particular is in one of those pockets. We all have them, that just the neighborhoods that missed rain. And then this grower in particular, his tractor was just enough for the bar he was pulling. So we do believe with his grain carts and thing like that in the no-till. We think he was hitting a little bit of compaction zones, bringing that knife up a little bit. And those areas where we're hitting those compaction zones and that higher anhydrous, we're seeing that burn in the corn. So just walking through the grower through these kind of scenarios and how we can learn from it in the next time is probably the best thing that we can do when it comes to salt or anhydrous burn. I will be dropping an anhydrous burn link in the chat if you guys want some talking points to walk through with your growers.
Mhm.
Jim, do you have anything?
No, it's good points, and at least you look at this and you can see that we're starting to get at least the nodal root development is white. So that's the good news. Where you've got the radical and the lateral seminal roots are looking like they've taken the burn. So we're not at that point where we're transitioning to nodal roots. We still need to get to about V3, V4 to transition those nodal roots. So if we're burned down here, we just know that plant's going to be in for a long, tough road until we get moisture, because it's still living off the seed as well as those first roots. But just hope that we've got some of those healthy nodal roots eventually to kick in, but it's certainly going to delay those plants, and then of course cause unevenness as some plants are not in the burn zone or in the knife track, and they're going to take off quicker. Seeing this other years, of course, the biggest thing too is as they hopefully catch up or eventually start to grow out of it, how long does that unevenness last? And sometimes you see it temporarily, it goes away, but then if we see it again at pollination time or when those tassels come out, then we know it's got the potential to affect ear size and overall yield potential. Jumping into some insects, Nora.
Yeah, the nice thing is that our flights for black cutworm moths did slow down this past week. So that's always good news. So we do see that there were a couple, they have a variety of counties that are seeing flights, but we don't see those really high. I think the week before, what was there, a 10 or a 13? There was a double digit number, I think in Story County the week before. So we are seeing that slow down a little bit. This is something that southern winds can really influence as we get those big southern winds. But if you go to the next slide, I think you have the cutting dates. So it is a GDU measurement for cutting dates, and as we are ahead, this is another thing that will be slightly earlier this season than maybe in other years. So you can see for northwest and west central Iowa, we are expecting by the 22nd we're going to be seeing those larvae out in the fields doing some cutting. And not a trivia question, but a bonus, does anyone know which trait package we want you guys to focus on for scouting for black cutworm? That does not have black cutworm protection? No answers, but I'll give it to you because it's not a trivia question. Jim, if you go to the next slide, we do have our chart. So the fields that we want you to focus on for black cutworm scouting would be our VT2 pros. Our double pros are the trait in our part. Oh, that did not size up well. I apologize, guys. This mode of action trait is also in the newsletter, so you might be able to read it there. I do apologize that didn't transfer well. But our double pros are not protected from black cutworm feeding. Tricepta, Smart Stacks Pro, BT4 Pro, they will have that coverage for black cutworm, so we are not as worried in those fields. So in this chart, like I said, I apologize for not reading so well. It also is a really quick reference for glyphosate versus glufosinate application. So if you wanted to leave this with certain growers when dropping off chemistry, if you wanted to have it on the counter in the location, just as a talking point, down at the bottom, we do see that herbicide tolerance that Jim is underlying. And just to clarify, it is easier to over prepare and over talk about this in spray season rather than deal with an oopsie on the back end. So we'll hit that pretty hard as we get into post spray time, because again, thanks to our GDUs, we are talking post-spray time already. We had a lot, this was in the newsletter this week, but those fields that were sprayed the first week of April are hitting our 35 to 42 day window for pre-emergence herbicide starting to naturally break down. Not a failure on their part, it's just the timing that is naturally occurring. So we want to get out there and start to post spray. It's easier to keep them down than it is to kill them once they're up. That's my favorite saying. So there is a chart on the screen right now that really simple, but it shows the weeds that we expect to kind of be dropping off in emergence. We don't see as many lamb's quarter starting to emerge. Not so much for the ragweeds, but we are going to see that dramatic uptick in Palmer amaranth, water hemp. We're going to see some velvet leaf start in some fields. We do still have a lot of buttonweeds around. So we want to plan for solid protection from residual control through crop canopy. Jim already talked about how important crop canopy is. We want to have that stand so we can have adequate protection for weeds going forward in many of these fields. So I will drop in the chat a chart that Jim and I really like that shows the emergence of weeds along with by species and GDUs and how long that emergence window is. So the big part is we are at the correct corn stage. We are at the correct GDUs. We are going to be seeing a very long emergence of our favorite species, water hemp, going forward. So Jim, do you have anything on the post spray of corn?
Well, yeah, a lot of good points that you made, Nora. Some of our pre's this year, both on corn and soybeans, got out earlier than normal. And like you say, it's getting to the point where they are running out, and we're seeing water hemp emerge, seeing woolly cup, seeing velvet leaf. They're all out there. Sometimes you get that recharge, especially some of the products like Balance or even some of the other cetaclors, and you get continuing rains, you do get a little bit more activation, and a lot of areas just have not had that, of course, in the last 10 days. So we know we're going to need to be timely with these post-emerge applications, and we've had a pretty decent run without much wind, and of course that's changed here in the last few days, and it sounds like will change quite a bit in the next couple days. But yeah, we're certainly at the point where we want to be running with our corn post. Some of the first corn post emerge products were going on late last week, which is some of the earliest that I can remember. Already doing corn post emerge on the 8th and 9th of May is crazy, but that's a good thing to get that down early and then hopefully get some moisture on it to get some of that overlapping residual. And then also just the timing on having the corn post emerges done early so we can get out there timely on our soybeans as well. And then looking at some of the windows as application on some of the Bayer products, knowing that already some of these fields are at V2 and quickly moving into V3, so it does start to change the mix of products. If we're looking at some of the Trivolt and Corvus Balance Flex type products that will be moving out of that window here shortly. One other comment I wanted to make on the insect side, mentioned the black cutworm. The other one, of course, that the southern winds bring up is armyworm, and typically not a huge factor, especially on the corn side. But last year we did run into several cases where the armyworm on soybeans were really causing some problems. Kind of a rare situation, but these no-till fields, especially if it was planted green, attractive to those moths, they were able to do some damage and take stand out. So I guess just be on top of those fields. Those fields with cover crops, we need to really pay attention, not only assessing the stand, but also looking for insect issues. So just one of those oddball insects, but has shown up, and you hate to get caught without looking, where something like that is fairly easy to control if you're able to catch it timely as far as knocking them out with an insecticide. Well, Nora, we are getting close to the end here, so anything else you want to add before we head into the spotlight product and wrap it up?
I don't have anything, guys, but if you have any questions, we piled the newsletters the last 2 weeks full of resources, but obviously reach out if there's anything that's odd or getting a little confusing. We are here to help.
Yep, absolutely. And so a spotlight product, a product that I really like and is now moving into really this third year that we've had it, ramping up the volume significantly. One of our higher volume products for most areas, but DKC 11010 as a Smart Stacks product, very versatile as far as where it can go. Seen really good stress tolerance out of this one. Like it corn on corn, even though it's just a Smart Stacks, it isn't the Smart Stacks Pro, so it does not have the RNAi as a mode of action, but still has very good disease tolerance, very good Gauss's wilt tolerance, and a lot of characteristics for corn on corn. Like I mentioned, versatile too, with the ability to go into some poorly drained soils with a pretty solid root system. Very good on fusarium crown rot. And really overall, the disease package looks good. As far as emergence, it isn't one of our quickest ones out of the ground. Usually the stand establishment is there, but as I look at fields and as I rate plots, it's usually middle to even lower as far as where it ranks. And really have seen that every year it's been out, but like I say, stand establishment generally is there. Last year we did see some pockets of green snap on this one. The rating is solid for green snap, and I haven't seen it too widespread, especially because this one has been planted quite a bit out in Nebraska and Western Corn Belt. So feel overall pretty good about the green snap score. But one of the products that I really like and one of our higher volume products. So be a fun one to watch this year. With that, we are at the end. As usual, we've got the QR code for the half credit in crop management on the CEU side. And then also we've got the QR code for signing up for some of the agronomic updates that come out every couple weeks. That is where we wanted to wrap up, but sir, open it up for questions or comments for anyone out there.
We technically are done 2 minutes early, so we do have time for 2 minutes worth of questions, but we know it is a very busy week.
That's right. Finishing ahead of time is pretty much always a good thing, right, Nora? Versus going long.
Yeah, usually, unless it's absolutely raining and there's good discussion, right? Like otherwise we all got fields to go look at. Always another one.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, it looks like we are ready to wrap up. So appreciate everyone for being on again, and stay safe out there, and make sure you're calling, texting if you have questions, comments for us.
Have a great day, guys.
Yep. Take care. Thanks.